All right, today we're going to learn HTML. We're basically going to learn how to build web pages. So we're not going to cover anything even remotely advanced today. We're just going to learn the basics. We're going to try to go from basically from we're going to go from 0 to semi-competent in as little time as possible. So let's get started here. Now, we're not going to, it's worth noting, we're only covering HTML. We're not going to be covering, we're not going to cover JavaScript or CSS. We're just doing HTML, and we're not doing anything even remotely advanced. We're just going to bring you from like 0 to competent in as quick as we possibly can. So if you look here, if you want like a full HTML course, I would actually recommend going to W3 Schools, and they have this HTML tutorial that teaches you everything you could possibly want to learn. It'll take a little while, but you'll learn a lot. So anyways, but if you want to learn a whole bunch really quick and get up to speed as fast as possible, this video is a great tutorial. And if you check the link in the description, it will bring you to our webpage that corresponds to this video once I have that webpage up, which should be shortly after posting the video. Anyways, moving along, so also I'm going to be eventually probably posting a more advanced HTML tutorial which will match what's on W3 Schools, but not today. So if you want the advanced stuff and anything you could think of, check this one out. But if you want to just get up to speed for now, follow along with my tutorial. So that said, let's get into it. So for HTML, basically a web page is an HTML document. And what that is, it's basically just a plain text file. It just has plain unformatted text in it. And instead of a .txt extension, it has a .html extension. Now you notice over here, I have a page loaded in the browser. It's demo.html, and it's on my desktop. Now I'm doing this on a Linux desktop, but this pretty much works the exact same way whether you're on Linux, Windows, Mac OS, or something else. Now you see all this marked up stuff here. Well, if you look over here, this is the file that does that. See, I have demo.html, and you see all this HTML code that gives you, now don't worry about all that, we'll get to that in a bit, but all this HTML code gives you this file here that looks like this. Now this is an ugly looking page, but it's just meant to show you all the different features of HTML. If you actually built a real web page, you'd want it to look all pretty with menus, and you wouldn't want it to look all cluttered like this. That said, we're going to base everything off of this demo HTML file, but I'm not going to teach you this exactly. I'm going to start building this slowly, piece at a time. So let's get started. Now we're going to create a new HTML file. So I'm going to say create new document, empty document, and that's almost the exact same thing you would do on Windows or Mac OS if you're using one of those other operating systems. So anyways, we're going to call this my-site, or call it mypage.html. Hit enter. Now, if you're on Windows, you'd open it with Notepad. Here, we have a few different text editors to open it with. I would choose, I actually like Kate, but rather than open a new instance of Kate, I'm going to click on this and drag it over into my existing instance. Now I have two things inside Kate. And you know what? I take that back. I'm going to close that. And I'm going to open this in a separate instance so we can see them side by side. I think you can open Kate you can open Kate in, you can like split it in a split screen, but we're not going to bother with that right now. All right, so a few things I wanted to cover also before I forget. Why learn HTML? Well, to write web pages from scratch, to tweak and modify things that are built by other tools like a CMS, like in WordPress. If you want to modify certain things, you kind of want to know HTML, even if you are using WordPress. And then it's great for creating snippets for web apps. So it's not just for writing web pages from scratch. It's useful if you're using other tools. So anyways, discard that. And now, so this is our new file we created, mypage.html. Now, move this down over here, and say if we take mypage.html, say if we want to view that, drag that over into our browser, create it, and there it is. It's a blank page, as you would expect. So we have a nice blank page here, and so we want to actually see something on our page. So we're going to start copying in some code here. Now, to start out with, we're just going to, say if you type in some code, just type in some text. Now this won't be a valid web page, but let's save that and then go over here and refresh it. Now you see some text on your web page. That's all. Now this file, this is just an HTML file on our local desktop. It's in, I believe I put it in a folder on my desktop, right? So this is different from if you would, normally you would load a web page from a web server on the internet, but in this case, we can actually have a web page saved as a local file on your desktop and still access it. So that's what we're doing today, just to teach you HTML. But if you wanted this to be a website on the internet, you'd have to upload it to a web server, and you could get it that way. So that's all fine and great. Now we're going to I'm going to show you the basics of how HTML tags work, because everything in HTML is based on a tag. Now, in most cases, you have an opening and closing tag. Some cases, you only have a single tag by itself. Now, so let's say if you have some text like this, right? Now, say if you want to make some of it bold, you would go like this. You start a tag out with this with the lesser than sign, and then you put whatever tag you want it to be, like B for bold, and then you close the tag with the greater than sign. So you have those two little things enclosing that tag. That's called an opening tag. Now, put a closing tag here is almost the same thing, but you have a slash on it. You have that slash, that tells us that it's a closing bold tag. So we have an opening bold tag and a closing bold tag. Everything in between that is made bold. So everything in between the opening and closing tag is affected by those tags. So this stuff in the middle is going to be made bold. So let's save that and refresh it over. And what did I do? I searched for that. I don't know. All right, I don't know how I managed to do that. All right, anyways, here we go. Here's my page that I just refreshed. And you see this middle thing here says that's in bold. So there you go. That's how you do that. So we have some bold text in the middle there. Now, another thing, the next thing I'll show you is how to do a header, a basic header. So same thing as the bold, except you do H1 for header 1. Now this is the highest level header. We'll get into all the different headers, but say test. Just call it test just to test it out. And then we're going to reload this. And there you go, you have a header right there. So that's how you start to format a page. Now, we want to build out the actual skeleton. This is not even a valid HTML document, but it still works anyways because our browser is basically forgiving. Now, here's the proper way to build the skeleton of an HTML document. You would put, now you're supposed to, now this isn't really required, but to do it correctly, you're supposed to put a doc type tag at the top. Put a doc type tag telling it that it's an HTML file. Your browser already knows, but do it anyways. Now, to start a file, you're going to type HTML. So the beginning of your document, you would say HTML. So that's your opening HTML tag. Now, at the very bottom of your document, this is the end of your document, HTML. So your entire document is going to go between those two HTML tags. Now the body of your document is going to go between two body tags. So you're going to say body, opening body tag, then you're going to have a closing body tag. Now we're going to close that up. That's usually going to be right at the bottom there. Now the stuff between the body tags is what you actually see on the page. Now we're going to have a header. Now the header, sometimes you might put scripts or other things there. We're not going over any of that today. The only thing we're going to do for the header, I shouldn't call this for the head section, right? H-E-A-D, head, and then head. So opening and closing tags for the head section. Now in the head section, you're going to put the title. And you're going to say closing title tag. Now notice over here, when we look at our page that we're building, it says mypage.html. It's just the file name, right? Because we didn't even define a title for it yet. See up here in the tab right here, it says just that's the name of the file. Now in title, between these title tags, you say my page title. All right, so save the file and now reload this, and you'll notice my page title. Now that's really important to have. It's a small thing, but it's important to have. So that's how you set your title. You're basically, for the basic skeleton of an HTML document, you'll have a header and you'll have a title inside the header. Inside between your two header tags, you'll put two title tags, and your title goes right in there. So this is like the skeleton of an HTML document. You would actually get rid of this. So an actual skeleton of an HTML document looks like this. This is your basic skeleton. And I haven't indented this. Like it's actually easier to read if you indent it. And I'm going to take some of these unneeded spaces out. Yeah, and I'm going to indent this. I think a lot of people like to do only 2 spaces of indentation. I like 4 just because that's what I like. But HTML doesn't care, and your browser is going to render it, no matter what. Technically, I should probably indent the body tag because it's within the HTML tags, but it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to do everything completely correctly, and I'm not going to be consistent with my indentation. Indentation, I'm mostly just using it to make the document readable. See how the header tag is, I indented that, but not the body tag. It doesn't matter. Now, the title tag is within the head tag, so I indented it a little bit. So you can do that. Now, save it and reload it, and you see it's blank because I got rid of everything in the body. Now, let's see if we can blast through this as fast as possible. So we're going to throw back our header 1 and throw in some more sample text, right? So we're going to throw in header 1 and paste this right in here, hit save. There we go. We got our header and some sample text back. So let's see here. Next, we are going to, we're gonna, so see how this text, see I had some text and more text? That all appears on one line. Now you say, hey, they're on separate lines. Well, HTML doesn't care. It doesn't care about your white space. It's just gonna group them all together. If you want those to be separate, you have to tell it. So the way you do that is with page break, or is with paragraphs. You could also use a BR. I should probably, I'm gonna cover that now. So let's say if we put more text, more text like this and more like this. Now I'm going to put a BR instead of, now if I hit save and reload the page, that's all on one line. I want 2 lines, I can say BR, and that says page break. Now notice I only do an opening tag and no closing tag. This is one of the types of tags that you only need one of them. You don't need a closing tag. Now refresh my page, and now we have 2 lines of text. So that's how you put things on 2 separate lines. Now you'll notice the header goes on a separate line. It just does that automatically because that's just how headers behave. So some things behave that way and some things don't. So anyways, moving right along here, we are going to we're going to look at the idea of paragraphs. Now, paragraphs are the right way to do it. You shouldn't write a bunch of text and put break lines all over the place just to create new lines. That's messy, and you can do it, but it's just not the way to do it. What you're supposed to do is create paragraphs. Now, if you use a tool, like a graphical tool to generate your HTML, like a tool that generates your web page for you, it's going to generate HTML, and it usually generates it with paragraphs like this. This is how a tool would generate it for you, and this is generally how you're supposed to do it. So see how I have 2 paragraphs defined here? Save it, go over here, refresh, and we have 2 paragraphs, and they're actual paragraphs, and it puts the spacing in and new lines automatically. So that's all fine and great and everything. And to make this less boring, we're going to put in the body tag, we're going to define an attribute. Now this is getting, I'm going to just define this, then I'm going to tell you what it is. This is going to change the background color. Now in our demo page, you notice we had a background picture. We're going to get to pictures later, maybe at the end, but for now we're just going to set a color. So go to our body tag, and you can paste that in, and now this is going, since I'm putting it in the body tag, this is going to affect everything in the body. Everything in the whole body of your whole document is going to get changed. So let's save it, and see our whole document got changed to blue. So and if you were to do that, you could do that for just like a smaller part of it. We'll get into that later. And one thing I'm going to point out that I'm not going to really demo is commenting things out. So if you comment things, this is good if you want to just type a little comment about what you did in your HTML code, or if you want to disable a piece of text. So you can use you can use a tag that says that you have an opening tag, exclamation mark, and 2 dashes that opens your comment, then 2 more dashes and the greater than sign, and that will comment out this entire line. So see how in our demo document, we commented out the whole thing that sets it to blue, and then instead we created a new body tag that sets it to a background image. So that's how you'll comment things out. If that doesn't make sense to you, just ignore it for the time being. All right, so let's see what else we want to cover now. Let's take a paragraph and paste this in, and I'll talk about that style thing that changed the color in a minute. Paste this new paragraph in here, save it, reload it, and that paragraph. Now, I didn't change the background, I changed the foreground color, which is the text color. So, basically, I'm setting styles. Now you can, there are old that are, there's a deprecated method of doing it where you can do this in pure HTML, but you're not supposed to change the colors and stuff in, like it's the old way of doing it and it's the wrong way now. It's considered wrong and it's bad practice, so we don't do it anymore. The way you're supposed to set the style is to write CSS and put your CSS in a separate document that gets imported into your HTML file. Now that's out of scope. We're not going to get into CSS, but and we're definitely not going to get into importing CSS files in this guide, but we'll do that maybe in a future guide. But for now, you can actually, instead of importing CSS, you can set little snippets of CSS per element. Now see here we have a style equals, and then you can set the style. You can, within quotes, you have 2 quotes, and everything in between those quotes is called CSS. It's not HTML, it's CSS. So when you say background dash color blue and put a semicolon, you really should put a semicolon at the end to be correct. But that sets the background color to blue. You're using CSS to do that. And then you assign that to this style variable, which is an attribute of this body tag. So you're telling the body tag to use this CSS, which sets the background to blue. So boom, we got the back. Just remember, if you haven't learned CSS yet, just keep in mind this is how you set it, the background to blue. And this is the same thing here, except instead of saying background color, we're saying color. So color equals red. So everything in this paragraph is going to have red text. So use color to set the text color and background color to set the background color. So just remember that and copy and paste these. For the time being, you don't have to understand them until you decide that you do want to learn CSS properly, and then you'll go through a CSS tutorial and learn that. And if you do want to do that now, just go to the W3 Schools website. If you don't want to do that now, or if you want to wait later on, I will likely create a CSS tutorial, but I do not have one as of today, and it'll probably be a while before I create one. So if you're watching this video, your best bet is probably to check W3 Schools and go through their whole tutorial. It's really long, but really good. Anyways, yeah, I shouldn't be like telling people to go to other people's sites, but that's your best bet at the moment. So for CSS background, which you don't need at the moment, you should probably just learn the HTML first. Now, let's see. So we've covered some of these attributes. And this blue background is so terrible, I'm going to actually copy this and paste it here. So we're disabling the blue background. So we're disabling this body tag. This whole line is getting disabled by that opening and closing comment tag, and we changed it to this background image. So hit Control S and reload it, and there we go. We have a background image. Now you might be wondering, where did that image come from? You can't just say the word background and you have this wooden background image. Well, take a look. We're saying background image, and this is also this is still using CSS like we did before. We're not going to get deep into CSS, but this is you can treat this as copy and paste syntax for now, since we're not learning CSS today. But background image URL, and you say background. Notice this is not in quotes. I mean the CSS is in quotes, but this image name is not in quotes. So we have background.jpg. That's going to load a file called background.jpg and use that as our background. Now, if we open up this folder where our site is, see we have our demo HTML file and our my page HTML file and another image for our site. Now, we have background.jpg, and this is a little wooden background image. It looks like wood, right? So that's our background image. So since that's in our same folder, we can tell our web page to load that file as our background. Now, if we want a different background, we could put a different image in there and just type the name of a different image, and we have a new background. So that's how you do backgrounds. The next thing we want to learn is So, all right, we did paragraphs, red text. Well, let's do the HR tag. So let's paste this HR tag right here. And HR stands for horizontal rule. So we're going to save that. Then we're going to reload this. And notice it put a line here. This line is created by the horizontal rule. So if you just want a line breaking up your page, that's one way you can do it. That's the way to do it. So that's our horizontal rule. So moving along from there, what else do we want to cover? So, all right, I'm going to do another example here. This is, but we've already done this, but it doesn't matter. All right, we're going to paste this one line with a BR in it, and that's going to be on two separate lines. So there we go. This is one line. This is another. That's all fine and great and everything. Now, let's learn about headers. Now we're going to take all these headers. I'm going to copy these and paste them right down here, just like in our demo document. Now notice we have, and I'm going to hit save, and before I even explain those, I'm going to reload this page and show you. Now you can see here we have header 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's no header 7, it doesn't exist. Now the higher or the lower the number, the larger it is. So notice at the very top of the page we had an H1, and that's header 1 up here. That's the biggest. If you want a little bit smaller header, there's H2, H3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, the thing to note about these headers are, now they're supposed to be like a hierarchy. So you'd put a bunch of header 3s under a header 2, and those would be like subsections of that header 1 section. So treat them as subsections. That's how it's meant to be done. It's how like Google expects you to structure your pages. The other thing worth noting, you can put an H1. I'll show you how you do it. Now the H1 is our title at the very top of our page. That's our title for our page. It should usually match the title here, but it doesn't have to. But that's like the main title, and you're only supposed to do that once. Best practice is to only have one H1 and put it at the top of your page. You don't have two H1s. You're never supposed to have more than one of those per page, but you can if you want. So I'm going to paste this down here just for demonstration purposes. Save it, reload the page. Now there we go. We have an H1 here. And let's just call this header 1, just to do it. Header 1, and save it, and save. All right, there we go. Header 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here is, so we have two headers. This is bad practice. You're only supposed to have a header 1 at the top of your page, but no big deal since this is just a demo. So we've done headers. Now we're going to do bold and strong. So I have these two new paragraphs. I'm going to paste these in, paste them in right here. Now this paragraph has, we're using the bold tag to bold some text, and we're using the strong tag to denote some text as strong. So save that. Load the site, and there we go. It basically does the same thing. I think strong is the new way you're supposed to do things, and I forget the reasoning behind that, but there was a reason for it, and I think it's good if you want to like override that in your CSS, but I think you could do it with either bold or strong. I forget why they prefer strong. I guess strong is supposed to show that you want to have emphasis, and it's not specific to like whether it's bold or how you want to do that. But in any case, basically, for all intents and purposes, they basically behave the same way. Anyways, moving on here. So we have a div. Now we have divs and spans. I'm gonna just paste both of these divs in here just to be faster. So there we go, two divs. Now you'll notice we have an opening div tag and a closing div tag. Then here, opening and closing. So a div is basically like a section. It's like a box or whatever. It's like a multi-line box. And so that encloses another section of the page. And you could put a bunch of different things in here and treat it as just a section of the page. So we're going to save this, and we're going to go over here and we're going to reload it. And you notice, see, this first one is a little bit shorter, and it doesn't. And then the second one is a little bit longer, and it has a couple break lines in it, so it's going to be 2 lines. Now look over here. you'll see there's our first one that's shorter, our second one that's longer, and it has 2 break lines in it. And you'll notice that they're 2 different colors. This is how you can create a box, like a section of your page that's a specific color. Or it might have other attributes, like you might set everything in there to have red text, or to have like you change the font size for everything in there, or change the formatting and do it on a per div basis. So a div is like a section of your page where you can alter the formatting for just that section and not for the rest of your page. Now in our example, all we did was change the background color for each of these. Now, when you specify background color, you can use these pre-built-in names for colors. Like you could call it, in this case we said tomato. So the color of tomatoes, it's setting it to tomato color. It recognizes color names like that, and there's a whole list of names you can look up. I'm not going to cover all of them, or even any of them except that one, and maybe one more. But yeah, basically there are a bunch of names that are, you can just check an HTML reference, or really a CSS reference, but there's a bunch of names you could do. Now, if you don't like doing colors by name, you can do colors by number. Now, this is a hex code for your number for your colors, and so this specifies red, green, blue, and so this combination of red, green, blue turns out to be pink. Now, you can select a color picker. So if you do like a Google search for color picker, you don't even have to go to the website. See, W3 Schools is at the top, but this gives you a color picker here. Now you can slide this over and change like the hue or whatever. You check green, and then you can check like how dark you want it to be. And notice once you've got that, you can see it in RGB, CMYK, HSV, HSL, all these different things. And if you just want the hex code for this, you can copy that hex code right there. And now you could paste it right over here. That's just how I get the hex code. Paste it right in here and save it. Now go back to our page and refresh it, and now we have green, just like we picked this hex code. So you can pretty much pick any weird color you want, grab the hex code for that color. So you have like a huge, ridiculously large number of choices. You can pick the hex code and just paste it in and get the exact color you want. So you're not stuck to the predefined colors that have names. But say if you want to change the color, you can just say blue. Let's see how that works. Save the file, go back to our page, reload this, and now we have blue instead of a tomato. Control Z, we're going to go back to tomato, and there we go. Now, what else do we want to cover? We have a few more things to go over. All right, so we did background, so we did divs. Another thing you can do is spans. So we're going to show you a span. And we're not going to get into a whole lot of details. So divs are like blocks, and spans are just like line-based. I'm not going to go too much further into formatting with divs and spans, because that's a little bit more advanced than what I wanted to cover today in this. So SPAN, span, and let's see, some text, blah. All right, there we go. Save that, and we can look at it here, reload that, and it's just some text. Didn't do anything to it for us. So we're going to take this style, and we are going to copy that, paste it in here so that you can see just so we can demo it being different. Now we're going to set this to blue, save it, and we're going to load it. Now notice here, see, these first 2 blocks are divs, and this one is a span. So the span only goes as far until the end of your text, and there's a closing span tag at the end of your text, so it ends right where your text ends. Now with these divs, they're blocks, so they go like the full width of the page, and by default, so it's just a block, and it's meant to be like a square, and every line will just go, it grows going up and down, but it doesn't, like it's a whole block. Anyways, this is how blocks and non-blocks look in HTML. So we're not going to get into that in any more depth today. Now, if you want to include images, you could do it like this. Now, you can copy this, and let's include an image here. So let's place this down here. Now we use the image tag. Now the image tag has no closing tag, it's just the opening tag. So it's just one single tag. And so the simplest way to do an image is to say img for the image tag, and then it has one attribute called source, or called src. Say src equals, and then in quotes, put the name of the image. And reload our site, and there we go. There's an image down there. You might be like, well, where did that image come from? Well, remember, if you look back at our directory here, we have an image saved in our little directory where we created our website. That image is tux.png. You can open that up. There's our image, and you can see it from the thumbnail anyways, but that's our image. So since that image is in our folder, all we have to do to get that image to show up on our site is to say, to use the image tag and tell it which image to load into our page. Now, this is using a relative tag, so this image has to be in the same directory as the page that's loading the image. So it can't be in like a subdirectory, or if it did, you'd have to specify the subdirectory. So if you move along here, there's another thing you could do. If you want to go a little bit further, we're going to try it with the alt text. This behaves the exact same way. So paste this in, save it. Now this is exactly the same thing. It's just going to give us two images, except we had alt text. Now the alt text is good for like say if someone's blind and they're using like a reader to read the web page, it will read it out for you, or like if someone's using Braille or something and the web pages, I'm actually not sure how those tools work, but they'll instead of displaying the images, like if someone can't see the image, it's going to display the alt text. Also, one really important thing is this is important for SEO purposes. If you're doing search engine optimization, like Google will look at your web page, and if you want to rank for a certain term, if you have the terms you're trying to rank for, in one you put them in the image name, but two you put them in the alt text, that will, that's a signal to Google to boost your rankings for that term. Now you don't want to just put the same term over and over again, because they'll see that as spam and derank your website. But anyways, let's load our page again, and you'll see two images. There's no real change to the images when you add the alt text, except if you inspect this image, you'll notice, so you see our two images there, and you can see the second one has some alt text there. This is actually how you can inspect the HTML of any page you want to see. You can just right click on it and say, well, you can click any element and say inspect, or you could say right click on your page and say view page source. And this will give you all the HTML source code for the entire page. And you can do that on anybody's page and see how they coded up their page. Most pages are going to have a ton more stuff on here, and it's going to be harder to pick apart. But give it a shot if you want on any page you're curious about. So if we hold our mouse over this, I don't think it's even going to give us like a tooltip or something. So I'm not sure if that's even going to, we're not going to see any real difference at all with that. So there we go. That's the alt text. Let's see here. We are now going to try three images that aren't going to work. I'm going to put a break line just to separate them out so you can tell the difference. And now I'm going to paste this in, and you notice I did a few things that are different here. Now this first one, I put a slash. All right, yeah. So rather than being a relative path, like these pictures above here are relative paths, this image here is an absolute path. So this slash represents the root of your web directory. So that's like the root of your web page. So that's an absolute path, and you are so it's not like relative to where your page is. So your page doesn't have to be in the same directory as your image, and your image doesn't have to be in the same directory as the page. So let's say if you put your image in an images directory, you could load it like this. And if it's in the root of your web directory, you could just load it like this. Now, you could do the same thing. You could do like a slash. You use your path like this and just have your alt text defined like that. So you could do that, and this works great on a page that's being served up from a web server. Now, in our case, we're not serving this up from a web server. This is being served up from a directory on our desktop. So it looks like this isn't working at all for me. So we define these, save it, go over here, reload it, and you'll notice we get these broken link things. And actually, this is actually a good example. You see, it can't load the image. It's giving us the alt text, so you know what image is supposed to be there. So like if the image gets deleted or something and you still have this image tag, you'll see the alt text of what's supposed to be displayed. So this is an example of the alt text in use. But yeah, so if you would use this exact same code right here on a live web page on a web server, and it's going to work. But if you use it on a directory like this, a website that you're just loading from a directory directly into a browser, it's not going to work. And that's why it's not working here. But you should be aware that this is a good way to do it on an actual web page. You can specify the exact location of the image, and you don't have to worry about it being relative to whatever file you're, wherever your HTML file happens to be. Like say if you move your HTML file, you don't have to worry about the path being broken for your image, or if you're defining it in like a header or a footer or something. So just worth being aware of. Now we have a few more things to cover today. So we've covered images. Now I'm going to throw another break line in there just to neaten things up so things don't get jumbled up. And we're going to learn about links. So the first type of link we're going to learn about is a regular text link. We're going to paste this in there. This is super important whether you're learning, if you're doing anything with the web, whether you're writing your web pages from scratch or not. Even if you're just using a tool like WordPress to generate them, you really need to know how links work. Everybody should know how links work, even if you're not a technical person. So I'm going to paste this in and save it. All right, so this is a text-based link. Now, you create a link with the A tag. So for example, you say, and you'll have an opening and closing tag. So A stands for anchor, and so you have this A tag, and your only attribute here is href. So href tells you what you're linking to. Href equals, and in quotes you say the page you want to link to. In this case, we're going to google.com. So and then you'll have your closing tag over here. Now these words in between these two opening, so you'll have the opening A tag, and then you'll have the closing A tag. Now everything in between it, these are the words that'll actually get displayed on your web page, and this is exactly how it's going to, so this is what you'll actually see, and this is an actual link. So when you click on this text, it's going to bring you to whatever site is listed here. So let's save that and load our page refresh our page, and scroll down here. Now look at the very bottom here, it says Google. So if you, see, it only says the word Google like it says right here, but if you click on it, it's going to bring you to google.com. So go back. Now we could create another page, like let's just show you how you would do this. So actually let's load the, so let's say create a new document, empty document, page2.html, and let's open this with another text editor, doesn't matter, blah, 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 throw some junk in there, save it, close it up. Now, let's say we want to create a new link to another page on our site. So paste that in here and say, we can say page2.html and page 2. And we don't want those on the same line. We'll put a break line in there, and we will put a few break lines here. Paste, 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 save it, and then go over here, reload it, and there we go. So now, see, we have a link to Google, and then we have another link called page 2. So page 2 should bring us to page2.html. And so click on page 2, and it brings us to page 2. Now notice we don't have our background or any of the other stuff on here. We just have that jumble of text that we just typed in here really quick. But that's all we have on page 2. Now we can go back. So that link brings us to another page on our same site. Now this is a relative path. Now we're not going to get too deep into relative paths, but you could have it just like this. So let's see if that works with something that's like a file in our. So look at this link. All right, it doesn't work because this link, this is like pointing us to the root file system, and that would work if this page were in the root of our web directory on a web server. That syntax would work, but since this is on this is like the root of the root of our web directory is not the root of our file system on our on our desktop, so you can't use this. You can't use this path. So you'd have to actually type out the full path on your file system, which we're not going to do. Anyways, well, actually, you probably could. You could probably say home user 1 desktop, and we could call it yeah. So we could take this whole path right here like this, and let's see how this works. So we can use these paths. We can hit save, and now let's try this link out now. Page 2. Now that works. Okay, so you can use that path, but this is, you have to put like the full path. Now, if this directory, my site, was the root directory on like a web server, you would define it like this with just a single slash there for the root. Now, and you could have like subdirectories for different sections or whatever. But anyways, yeah, we're gonna keep it like this for now, and that's how you do links, or that's how you do basic text links. Now, we're going to take a look at this. Now, we're going to do an image link. So we are going to copy this and paste it right here. Now, this is another link going out to google.com. Now, between these two A tags, we have an image. Instead of having text like saying Google or page 2, we just put an image there. So save that. Reload our page, and you're going to notice we have okay, we're gonna do the image in a way that it can load. We're not going to put the full path in there. All right, just a relative path, and there we go. We have another image, but you'll notice this third image is actually a link. So when you hover over it, you'll notice it says https://google.com. So this is an actual link. So when you click on this image, it takes you to Google. So, and you could set that up to take you wherever, but point is, you could use text links, or you could use an image. Instead of text, you could use an image as a link instead. And all you have to do that is put this IMG, you can put this IMG, put your image tag inside the two link tags to create a link image, or an image link, whatever you want to call that. But anyways, moving along from there, we're going to talk about lists. We're just going to copy this list here and paste it in here. Now the UL stands for unordered list, and this creates a bulleted list. Now you're going to have, to start the list, you have a UL, that's the opening tag for your list, then a /UL for the closing tag for your list. Everything in between that is part of the list. Now for a single list item, like a single bulleted item, you have an LI tag. LI stands for list item. So you have an opening tag and a closing tag at the beginning and end of each list item. Now we have 3 list items. We have apples, oranges, and raspberries. So you have an opening and closing LI tag for each one of those going down the list. Now let's take a look at how that looks on our page. Now scroll, I didn't save that. All right, save it and go over here, reload it, and there we do. See at the bottom of the page, it says apples, oranges, and raspberries. And I feel like we should probably put this further up towards the top, but I guess we'll just, it's fine at the bottom here. I feel like this should be in the middle of in the middle of the desktop, just so people can see it better. Now we have this bulleted list, and it's hard to make out all the text on this because of the background. I think I'm going to just change the background back to, I'm going to change this to, you know what, let's make it tomato. I think tomato works as a background, works well as a background. So we're going to set it to a color. I'm going to remove this, this image as the background and set the background so you can see things more easily. And there we go. That's kind of, that looks ugly to have your whole page like that, but at least you can read it more easily. So yeah, we have our bulleted list, apples, oranges, and raspberries. That's a UL, unordered list. All right, so we're going to do an ordered list. They're going to be numbered instead of bulleted. It works the exact same way. Only difference is you have OL for ordered list instead of UL for unordered list. So make sure we save that and reload the page, scroll down a little, and there we go. we have an ordered list, 1, 2, 3, apples, oranges, raspberries. There we go. Now, if we want a table, if we want to create a table, you can do it like this. You can say, you can create tables of data. So you can say table, and then, so opening and closing table tags. Now, everything within that is a table. Doesn't mean any text you type in there is a table. If you type text in there, that's going to be like incorrect formatting, and probably it's just going to paste the text somewhere outside of your table. But that's wrong, and don't ever do that. So anyways, tables are going to have rows. So you say tr for table row, and then a closing tag for that table row. Now say you want 2 rows in your table, right? And so within a row, you're going to have a cell. So you're going to call it td for table data, and another closing tag, td, for your closing table data. So in this row, you're going to have the opening and closing td tags. So, and then you're going to have, let's say we have 2 of those to make it the simplest possible demo of a table that's still actually something. So we're going to have 2 rows, and each row is going to have 2 cells. So we have tr, opening and closing tr for 1 table row, and then another table row. We have opening and closing tag for 1 table data, and opening and closing tag for another table data, which is a cell. Now we're going to say 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now save that, and let's reload our page and scroll down, and we have a table which has 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you notice we don't have a border around it or anything. I think that's just what Chrome does by default these days. It doesn't have borders around tables. You've probably seen them with lines in them with like a grid and a border. So I'm going to put a more elaborate table. Now if you look over here, so I'm just going to copy this more elaborate table in here and put it beneath our table that we created by hand. So paste this table in here and hit save, and then we're going to load it in our page here. And you'll notice this table is green, and it has a header row that's in bold, and it's green, and it has a border around it. So we took this table, and in the table tag we added a style tag. We set the background. This is a little bit more elaborate CSS, which we'll cover not in this course today. So we're not going to teach you exactly how this works, but so I don't expect you to understand how CSS works. That comes a little bit later. That's kind of out of scope for what we're trying to do today. But background color is green, border is 1 pixel solid black, and border collapse is collapse. So the border is not going to be like 2 lines. And I'm not getting into the formatting or like the specifics of how to make tables look pretty or anything, but just to show a little bit more of what you can do. Now, the same as the table we have above, we had tr for table rows, and within table rows you have table data. We have td, td, td for table data. Those are all our cells. And now, instead of td on the top row, we have th. Th stands for table header. That's almost the same thing as td, table data, except it's treated as a header, and it's going to be bold by default. So there you go. That's how you get this table that we created here. And you can also add grid lines through it, but we're not covering that today. So yeah, you could make it look prettier with some fancy CSS, add like grid lines and align things to the, you could center text or align text left or right or whatever else. You could do all sorts of things, add padding, add spacing, everything. We're going to skip all that for today. That's kind of out of scope. We're not going to get that fancy today. That's going to be saved for more of a CSS tutorial. So yeah, we would make more elaborate CSS here to format our table in a prettier way. All right, anyways, moving along, we're going to talk about forms. Now, forms are are a way you can submit data to a web server. Now, that actually requires you to have a script on your web server that will then process the data and send a response back. That's like server-side scripting, and that requires an actual web application, and that's way, way, way beyond the scope of our tutorial today. But I wanted to show you how you would actually create a form just to create the form. Now, to create a form, you have an opening and closing form tag. Now the action attribute is going to say action.php. This, if you have a form and it gets submitted, when it gets submitted to this thing in the action attribute. So there would be a page called action.php, and when you submit this form, it gets submitted to that page, and that page has to know how to process all this stuff that gets submitted to it, and it'll return some results back to you. Now you can use a get method or a post method. This is also way out of scope for this tutorial today. We're just using get to keep things simple. It really doesn't matter though. We're not gonna elaborate on that. Now you can create labels, you can create input, which is just, you can create text input, and I created two input fields and a couple labels, broke the line, did another label, then we created a radio button, and then I created another break line, and then I created another input that is a submit button. Now I'm going to copy and paste this whole thing, and I'm going to show you how it looks before explaining any more of that. So paste that in, save it, and if this is going too fast, don't worry, this is not the time to learn forms. So I'm going to put a big HR, so HR before this form, and I'm going to put an HR after the form. I'm going to save it, just 1 second. I'm going to refresh it. Now there we go. So we can tell our form starts here and ends here. Now this gives us a text box we could type in, select a color, and there are a bunch of other little controls. We're not covering them all. There are a bunch of other input controls you could add. When you hit submit, it submits it to that page. Now action.php doesn't exist, so it fails. Now we're not going to go any further into forms because you'd really need to do the server-side scripting to get this to work, and there's no point in going into it. So I'm really not going to cover this stuff today, but you should be aware of what a form is and what it looks like. But actually getting it to work is far out of the scope of what we're covering today. But just so you're aware, yeah, the submit button is like this, and you see these two text fields. Those are input type equals text. This is one text field and another text field. And you have this input radio button, which is this little button you clicked here. And for the text fields, it sets the name to LName, ID to LName. So that is, I forget which of these was which, but that's basically the variable name that gets sent up to action.php to get processed. So that's the data that gets sent up there. And that's pretty much everything that we're covering today. If you want to get into more depth, we're going to do a new tutorial. This went way longer than I thought it would. I was planning for this to be like learn HTML in 10 minutes or learn HTML in 15 minutes. Turns out I think this was closer to 45 minutes. But yeah, we covered a lot of HTML stuff. There's a lot more a lot more little specific tweaks you could learn. And next you want to learn CSS and then JavaScript. Not necessarily in that order, but I think that would be an order that makes sense. And there's a ton more HTML5 stuff to learn, where you can learn like animations and all sorts of crazy graphical stuff. And there's so much more to learn, but this gets you basic HTML, brings you from like 0 to competent in just, core HTML. So this is a good start, and this is what we set out to do today, and this is what we've covered today. So if you like this, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more things like this, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell icon. If you have questions, comments, or criticism, or if you want to correct me on something or do anything else, just leave a comment down below. And as always, hopefully you found this video useful and enjoyed watching it. And thank you for watching.